All right, guys. So we have learned that Tucker Carlson is, in fact, being spied on by the U.S. government, right? The NSA, allegedly. And guys, I already told you before when I initially did this story, I'm not surprised at all. I don't know why anybody's acting surprised by this. Snowden told us about this literally a decade ago that this was happening. And for whatever reason, Tucker is trying to act like this is something new and trying to make a big deal out of it because it is happening to him. And I would think that as a journalist, a political journalist, Tucker would already know this stuff. But hey, it is what it is. It's cable news. But the liberal media, because they hate Tucker Carlson, came after him. They said, there's no way you're being spied on. Why would they want to spy on you? Blah, blah, blah. Calling him a crazy person, calling him a conspiracy theorist, okay? The same things they always accuse people on the right of being, right? Until one of their own actually confirmed what was being said was true. As Jonathan Swan here posted an article from Axios basically saying, new, Tucker Carlson was talking to U.S.-based Kremlin intermediaries about setting up an interview with Putin shortly before he accused the NSA of spying on him. U.S. government officials learned of this outreach, but that's where details get cloudy. Okay, so this article from Axios, which I'm going to go over here in a few minutes, some parts of it, essentially confirms that the U.S. government knew about Tucker's efforts to get an interview with Vladimir Putin. Okay, so officials within the government knew about what he was doing. Now, again, let's use some common sense here. Because Axios is saying, well, we can't confirm that any of Tucker Carlson's communications, right, his emails or his texts were actually intercepted, okay, or that he was a target of whatever type of surveillance or spying that may or may not have been done, right, allegedly. How would they know about the contents of Tucker's private emails? Because according to Tucker, he was trying to keep it kind of hush-hush, right, in terms of what he was doing, right? Because he wanted to secure the interview. He didn't want to, rattle anybody, right? So the thing is that the only way that these U.S. government officials would know is that he was either a part of some type of surveillance operation, okay, and his identity was unveiled. And that's kind of the big issue here, right? That's kind of what's going on. If you remember, the NSA, after Tucker had came out and accused them of spying on him, they essentially came out with a statement saying, on June 28th, 2021, Tucker Carlson alleged that the National Security Agency had been, quote, monitoring our electronic communications and is planning to leak them in an attempt to take this show off the air. This allegation is untrue. Tucker Carlson has never been an intelligence target of the agency, and that the agency has never had any plans to try to take his program off the air. The NSA has a foreign intelligence mission. We target foreign powers to generate insights on foreign activities that could harm the United States. With limited exceptions, an emergency, NSA may not target a U.S. citizen without a court order that explicitly authorizes the targeting. Okay, so here's the deal. This is basically a statement saying, well, we weren't really targeting Tucker specifically, but we're not going to say that he hasn't been caught up, right, in terms of the information that we've collected. We're not going to say we haven't collected information on him as a part of a broad data collection project or anything like that, right? We're not going to say that, but we're going to say he just hasn't been a specific target. We haven't went after him specifically, okay? So that's the NSA and their carefully worded statement trying to rebuke Tucker Carlson. And guys, by the way, I mean, think about how powerful Tucker Carlson has to be at this point. And he has generals responding to him. He has U.S. Government agencies responding to him. The dude is the most powerful political journalist basically in the country, okay? In the country, maybe even the world at this point. And that's why, people like Brian Selter spend so much time hating on the guy because he demands attention, right? Love him or hate him, the guy is great at what he does. And this is why I admire Tucker. Now, Tucker responded to, Axios basically coming out and confirming that, hey, the U.S. government has taken some interest in Tucker Carlson trying to set up an interview with Putin, and this is what his response was.
And as we told you repeatedly, it did happen. Now that has been confirmed. Yesterday, we learned that sources in the so-called intelligence community told at least one reporter in Washington what was in those emails, my emails. was nothing scandalous in there, thank God. We're happy to report that. Late this spring, I contacted a couple of people I thought could help get us an interview with Russian President Vladimir Putin. I told nobody I was doing this other than my executive producer, Justin Wells. I wasn't embarrassed about trying to interview Putin. He's obviously newsworthy. I'm an American citizen. I can interview anyone I want, and I plan to. But still, in this case, I decided to keep it quiet. I figured that any kind of publicity would rattle the Russians and make the interview less likely to happen. But the Biden administration found out anyway by reading my emails. I learned from a whistleblower that the NSA planned to leak the contents of those emails to media outlets. Why would they do that? Well, the point, of course, was to paint me as a disloyal American, a Russian operative, been called that before, a stooge of the Kremlin, a traitor doing the bidding of a foreign adversary. And of course, I'm hardly the only person who's been accused of those things in the last several years. We've seen this movie several times now. At the same moment, the communist Chinese government increases its already stunning level of control over this country, our leaders prattle on about the threat of Vladimir Putin. He's an evildoer, they tell us, a totalitarian dictator. Vladimir Putin does things that no American leader would even consider. He runs domestic disinformation campaigns. He lies to the public. He punishes people for opposing him or for believing the wrong things. He even uses intelligence agencies to spy on his own citizens. Beyond the pale stuff. So no decent American would interview Vladimir Putin, at least no reporter from Fox News. That was the point they wanted to make. That's why they planned to leak the contents of my emails to news organizations. And yesterday, as noted, we learned they actually did it. Even now, some in the media are claiming that we deserve this. Emailing with people who know Putin, are you? Of course the NSA is watching you. That's what you get. But that's hardly the point. By law, the NSA is required to keep secret the identities of American citizens who've been caught up in its vast domestic spying operations. So by law, I should have been identified internally merely as a U.S. journalist or American journalist. That's the law. But that's not how I was identified. I was identified by name. I was unmasked. People in the building learned who I was. And then my name and the contents of my emails left that building at the NSA and wound up with a news organization in Washington. That is illegal. In fact, it is precisely what this law was designed to prevent in the first place. We cannot have intelligence agencies used as instruments of political control. Both parties used to agree on that. Democrats were especially adamant on the point, but not anymore. So that's exactly what is happening here.
All right, guys. So as you can see there, Tucker is basically saying his piece, right? Talking about how wrong it is. And, here's the thing. I don't really have a problem with what Tucker said. I just have a problem with what he is leaving out, right? He is acting like this is something new. And it really bothers me that he is, because Snowden already told us about this. And I honestly would like to see him actually give some credit to Snowden for exposing the fact that NSA spies on American citizens, right? Probably illegally, years ago. And honestly, this would be a great time to bring Snowden on, right, to the show to talk more about it. I think Snowden, ironically, is in asylum in Russia, right? And Snowden has been on Joe Rogan's podcast. He's been on other, news networks, I believe. I don't see what the problem would be. Tucker should bring on Snowden and make this an issue, right? In this day and time in 2021, the American people, we're so caught up arguing and bickering with each other about race. Again, I must say I'm a part of that, but we're so caught up in that we don't really care about the real issues anymore, right? Like the fact that our constitutional rights are being violated every single day by the U.S. government and nobody's saying anything about it. And Tucker, instead of using his platform to basically talk about how the government's going after him, which is wrong, right? That's obviously wrong. I think that he can use his platform to talk about this happening in general, because this is just not a Biden administration thing. This is something that's been happening way back when, probably since the Bush administration, okay? So it's not unique to Biden. Now, is Biden specifically targeting him? Maybe, and I think that is wrong if that's what Biden's doing, allegedly. But, again, this is something that has been happening for a long time, and I just don't like the fact that Tucker is trying to act like it's something new when it's not. And I think that he should, at the very least, bring Snowden on the show to talk more about these programs and the capabilities that the U.S. has in terms of surveillance on U.S. citizens. But this Axios article here really outlines some plausible explanations in regards to why Tucker was unmasked. Okay, unmasked means his identity was revealed. Okay, because they can technically spy. It's just that your identity is not supposed to be revealed. It's supposed to stay anonymous. Okay, that information is not supposed to be leaked. Okay, to journalists and to the public and things of that nature. But Tucker's was, right? It was leaked, and people inside knew who he was, right? And that's an issue. That's his main beef. So again, in this article from Axios, they outline some possible scenarios about how this may have happened, and I want to go over that with you guys. So it says, experts say there are several possible scenarios, including legal scenarios, that could apply. The first and least likely scenario is that the U.S. government submitted a request to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to monitor Carlson to protect national security. Now, again, Tucker, because he was requesting an interview with Vladimir Putin, again, there's a whole lot of things that he could have gotten caught up in, right, in terms of how the U.S. government spies on people who are trying to communicate with Putin, right? Obviously, they spy on foreign governments, okay? That's just what they do, right? And if Tucker is trying to communicate with a foreign government in some way or a foreign official, then it's plausible that he can be caught up in that. Again, the question is, was he specifically targeted? Which, you know, Axios is saying that, hey, you know, that's probably the least likely scenario, that he was the target, him specifically. And how did his identity get unveiled? How did he get unmasked? A more plausible scenario is that one of the people Carlson was talking to as an intermediary to help him get the Putin interview was under surveillance as a foreign agent. In that scenario, Carlson's emails or text messages could have been incidentally collected as a part of monitoring this person, but Carlson's identity would have been masked in any intelligence reports. In order to know that the texts and emails were Carlson's, a U.S. government official would likely have to request his identity be unmasked, something that's only permitted if unmasking is necessary to understand the intelligence. Okay, so again, that's where this gets sketchy, okay, is who is responsible for unmasking Tucker, right? Trying to expose him, right, potentially as a Russian operative, you know, the way they love to smear conservatives, okay? In a third scenario, interceptions may not have involved Carlson's communications. The U.S. government routinely monitors the communications of people in Putin's orbit who may have been discussing the details of Carlson's request for an interview. But under this scenario, too, Carlson's identity would have been masked in reports as part of his protections as a U.S. citizen, and unmasking would only be permitted if a U.S. government official requested that his identity be unmasked in order to understand the intelligence. And it's not clear why that would be necessary here. So, yes, I mean, those are basically the three scenarios that have been presented by Axios. Either way, like I said, the point is that Tucker's identity was revealed, and that's an issue, right? And let's read a little bit more here. The intrigue. Two sources familiar with Carlson's communications said that his two Kremlin intermediaries live in the United States, but the sources could not confirm whether both are American citizens or whether both or were on U.S. soil at the time they communicated with Carlson. This is relevant because if one of them was a foreign national and on foreign soil during the communications, the government wouldn't necessarily have to seek approval to monitor their communications. Okay, so yeah. That's the gist of kind of what's going on here, right? With Tucker Carlson and the NSA allegedly spying on him. It seems like that Axios has at the very least confirmed that his communications were monitored, or that communications that he was involved in were monitored, right? And you know, the question now is, you know, how did his identity get unveiled? How did he get unmasked? So this story probably will continue, right? It's not over, but, you know, I would just say this at this time is that I just wish that Tucker would bring on Snowden, because it's a good opportunity to really have a conversation about our constitutional rights being violated in regards to privacy, you know, domestic spying, things of that nature. I think it's a good opportunity for Tucker to bring that to the light, and he's done that on a national spotlight. I think he should follow up with that in the right way by going back to the original source who leaked this information, letting us know that this was happening in the first place. So that's what I would like to see moving forward, but we will see how this story continues to evolve. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.